In the past decade, we saw tremendous growth in tourism on the island. Room nights sold, for example, in 2019, there was 110,000 more than in 2009, which is a significant increase. Visitation to the national park went up significantly. Cruise ship passengers, more than 100,000, and it would have been more in 2020 if it hadn't been COVID. The economic impact of Celtic Colors more than tripled. So we saw substantial growth. And why a 10-year strategy now? Well, we didn't want to rest on our laurels and just be happy with where we were. We wanted to see how we can take the industry to the next level. And that's why we initially embarked on a new 10-year strategy. Some people have asked why a 10-year, because so much can change over 3 to 5 years, for example. But having a 10-year strategy and a vision allows us to be bold, to really have an ambitious plan, and that gives us something to shoot for. A strategy is something that it should be a living document that you're always going back to and changing and adapting as needed. So we see that process. We'll be able to adapt as we go forward, and things might pop up. Hopefully no more pandemic. One of the things that we're going to focus on is care for community. So you've probably heard that in some other tourism destinations that over-tourism has been a problem. We haven't seen that so much here, except for maybe small instances. If you've been on the Skyline Trail late afternoon when the sun's coming down, in August or September, you might have seen a full parking lot there or a lot of people there, those sorts of things. But usually it's not a problem. But we want to be proactive and make sure it's not a problem. So we want to develop this strategy so that we're planning in a responsible way so that tourism enhances our quality of life for our residents and never becomes something that has a negative impact. So that's going to be a key to the strategy. 365-day season. Currently, about 2/3 of our business, tourism business, happens within a 15-week period from the beginning of July to the end of Celtic Colors. And, there's a full 37 weeks other than that where we could be generating visitation and providing a more sustainable industry for our operators and for those who work in the industry. So working on extending our shoulder seasons, building winter, those sorts of things are going to be a key for us. So sustainability, but when we talk about sustainability, it's not just environmental sustainability, that's a big part of it, but also cultural, social, and economic sustainability. All of those are important. So as an example, it's very important that we are renewing our culture with our youth, for example. So if the Gaelic College didn't exist and wasn't training or educating some of our young folks in things like how to play fiddle tunes or how to step dance, would that mean that Celtic Colors wouldn't exist in a generation? So it's important that things like that be part of the equation. So often we focus on just promoting the actual festival, but there's a whole bunch of things that you have to ensure are in place that lead up to that. Cluster focused. It's funny, I worked for an economic development organization back in the early 90s. That's how old I am. And one of the buzzwords at that time was cluster development. And it's come full circle. But the reason it's come full circle is because it makes sense. So a cluster is essentially a group of like-minded companies, organizations within a particular sector that are in a geographic area. Our tourism industry actually meets all the criteria of what makes up an economic cluster. But within that, we also see that there are certain product clusters. For example, our cultural tourism folks would be a product cluster that's very strong. our outdoor adventure folks, our culinary folks. So we see 3 different product clusters, and what this is going to focus on is supporting those clusters and the overall industry by encouraging innovation, and a constant focus on trying to renew our product and take it to another level, and with ongoing research that supports where things could go, looking at trends, seeing how can they be applied in Cape Breton. So that will be a big focus. And digitally driven. As you know, everything today is being driven by technology more and more. Within the next couple of years, I think it's 97% of our island is going to be going to have high-speed internet. I'm living in an area where my internet at home is absolutely terrible, so I can't wait for some of that high speed to get to me. But with that, we'll see that there will be more opportunities for us to develop new solutions that can help our industry. So, for example, addressing things like over-tourism. I mentioned the Skyline Trail. That we might have an app developed that could point people to say, listen, the Skyline Trail is packed today, but why don't you take a look at something that's in Richmond County where there aren't as many people, where you could have a more enjoyable experience. So we might be able to disperse people around the island in ways that would avoid over-tourism and get them to see more of the beautiful place we have to offer. So that's just one example. But the digital focus will be big. Once you get the strategy, you will see that within it we have identified 6 what we call game changers, and these are areas where we feel there is room to grow the tourism industry. So those 3 product clusters I mentioned: cultural tourism, adventure tourism, culinary tourism, but also events, and events could be meetings, it could be festivals, and we'll be looking at the creation of new events and working with partners to do that. We'll be looking at supporting existing events in innovating, that maybe they could expand what they're doing or enhance what they're doing to become a bigger and better event. Or attracting things like sporting events. We had the Scotties Tournament of Hearts a couple of years ago, so we'll continue to try to attract things like that. Green tourism is another area that is going to be, I think, key to your county. But in looking at the Boudreau but also coastal Cape Breton and the water-based activities that we have to offer, whether it's boating, kayaking, and so forth, there's much to be developed there. And then I already mentioned cluster development. So there's 6 game changers, and then there's 6 supporting themes. And these aren't necessarily areas where we see growth, but there are things that can be done to support the growth. So experience development and continued focus on product innovation, sustainable tourism I spoke to, strengthening our tourism business climate, and there's a number of things that we look at in that area. Things like placemaking, for example, could strengthen our business climate. Achieving excellence in visitor experience delivery. You know, things like sense of arrival when you come to the island. Things like that improve the visitor experience. They will arrive on the island, they'll get a proper orientation, they'll actually see that, you know, this is an amazing place from the time you cross the causeway. Attracting, retaining, and training a skilled workforce is going to be key to us as we go forward. And then the final one is our organization and evolving our organization to really support the leadership of this plan. This plan isn't something that we're doing all by ourselves. We'll be collaborating with many partners, and a number of different organizations have all played a role in developing the plan. So within this, you know, there are many areas that we see that Richmond County could play a role or benefit from this, and perhaps once the plan comes out, we can have another conversation at some point and look at some specific initiatives We've had a couple of discussions about trails, for example. There's an action here that talks about developing a comprehensive trail strategy for the island. I know the municipality is looking at a trail strategy that could be aligned with what's happening around the rest of the island, and that would just make it all more powerful, I think, and more comprehensive. So that's an overview of the plan. I do have a request. So just so you know, going back a couple of years ago, Richmond County did provide an annual amount to Destination Cape Breton. It was actually $10,000 a year that was spent on primarily product innovation activities. But 10,000 was the same amount that some other municipalities were paying as well. I think 5,000 is more equitable in terms of the size of the industry here in your county, and that would be fine for us. The focus of this would be really looking at new things that we could do in terms of experience development, for example, season extension initiatives. Just a couple of weeks ago, we had an experience development workshop specifically for Richmond County operators. We had 6 participate in that, and we're doing some follow-up mentoring now with some of those folks. We're looking at another initiative, a fairly brand new one, that will deal with Acadian cuisine that we're looking at. So there are a number of things that we're doing that could have a direct benefit on operators and organizations within your county. So that's my request to you, and within that we would provide an annual report at the end of the year to indicate exactly what we did with that investment. So I would greatly appreciate your consideration of that request, and anything you'd need to support that, I'd be happy to give that.
When you talk cluster development, you would talk like intertwining all this stuff together, like when it comes to tourism and the colony. So Acadian meat pies in this area, fish cakes and beans, all this stuff here, right? Is that what we talk about when it comes to intertwining all these together?
Yeah, and for many visitors, either they don't have the opportunity to experience traditional Acadian cuisine, or they don't realize that's what they're having sometimes when they're having it. So it's providing that education, but there may also be ways to look at innovative approaches to that as well. I'm not sure what that is, but I'd leave that to the chefs and so forth. But yeah, we think that's a great way. You can tell the story of your culture partly through the food, and that's a great way that people can get introduced to it.
I've been in the food sales industry for 28 years, so culinary is dear to my heart. But when you look at the heritage of Almadam and the Acadian heritage, I've always thought of boat tours, a culinary experience on a boat.
That would be amazing.
You talked about the 365-day season. It's like the holy grail that we've all been chasing here on Cape Breton Island for a long, long time. But it wasn't lost on me that there was a large picture of a section of multi-use trail in that picture. So can you just maybe tell me a little bit about what from your expert opinion, what does that look like? What could that look like for Cape Breton to turn our tourism economy more towards that 365-day season in terms of trails development?
I think if you look at what's happening with some trails in other areas, that was a photo of a fat bike that was on the Celtic Shores Coastal Trail. That is taking a trail that is multi-use. It could be that bikes are on it. It could be that other vehicles are on it, motorized vehicles, or just people walking. And it's being used 4 seasons of the year. So something like that is a possibility. If the investment is made so that the trail is built really well and maintained very well, it can be used year round. I think it's important to have that, to have the planning up front and the investment there so that, you know, it can be multi-use. That trail, you know, in winter, that was a fat bike photo, but there could be a snowmobile photo that would have passed by, you know, 5 minutes before that, for example. And I think it's important to recognize that when trails are developed, they can be really multi-use, as long as they're done properly and planned out, and maybe some regulations are needed to ensure that everybody is taking care of them the way they need to be taken care of. We're seeing a tremendous growth in snowshoeing, for example, on some of our trails. A lot of that would be, you know, in the highlands where, you know, you're going to have consistent snow. But the same people that go hiking there in the summer or the fall are coming back now to try it in winter. And so that's I think trails can be key to achieving that 365-day season vision.